Hi there. I just wanted to jump on here and record this really quick video on how to use the different applets. I've been getting a lot of emails asking when do I use which applet and how do I find data and how do I put in the data. And I know that in class, some of you have missed class for different things. So I wanted to just show you really quick. When you're on the home page, and hopefully you have been working on the review. I have the answers, the key for both chapter 2 and chapter 3. Please do remember that the exam is also in chapter 4. The data for the review 2, some of you have emailed me, where do I find the haircuts data? And that's for problem 2. So it's in the textbook website, haircut cuts, but you can also find it on our Canvas site. When you're on the home page, if you go to modules, we have StatCrunch, all applets, and textbook data files. That's where we have all the data files for the different examples in our textbook and even for homework. And so because that problem was from chapter 2, we have the chapter 2 right here. So haircut costs, you might remember female temps from the previous review. And so we have examples and explorations over here. And some of these are things that we do in class that are in my handouts. But this is where you will find the haircut data. So just copy and paste this onto StatCrunch. So once you copy it, you paste it onto StatCrunch, and then you'll be able to find the different things that it asks you to find. The graph, the median, the mean, and the variability, the standard deviation. So that's how you find that data, the textbook data. So again, it's under modules together with all the applets, StatCrunch, all applets, and textbook data files. Now to use the one proportion applet, I'm going to go back to the 3.1 handout, the kissing right handout that you guys did on your own. I went over it in class really quickly just to do the applet. So in order to use the applet, a lot of what you need is your statistic, your sample size, and the null hypotheses. So, and this is the one proportion, because the name says proportion, is categorical data. So that's why we use the one proportion applet. And so we have our null hypothesis is that the parameter pi is 0.5. Our statistic is 0.645, so 64.5%. And our sample size, I believe, was 124. So if you looked at the key for the Kissing Right handout 3.1, you can see I added the screenshot there, and that's what you need to put into it. But let me open it real quick. So again, from modules, you'll go to all applets, and once that pops up, where you click on open a new window, and so here's our Rossman chance, and we want the one proportion applet. So probability is 0.5. For the tire problem, we change that to 0.25. Our number of tosses is the sample size, which is 124 couples. And number of repetitions, we're going to do 1,000. We don't want to animate it because it takes a long time. And draw samples. So this is what it looks like. You want to make sure that you have the summary stats clicked, and also proportion of successes, not number, so that we can see the mean is 0.499 and our standard deviation is 0.04. And just to remind myself, this was a one-sided test, so it was greater than, and so we leave that as greater than, and our statistic was 0.645. And so this is going to give us the p-value. And remember the definition of a p-value. P stands for probability. So it's the probability of obtaining a result as extreme as our observed statistic, the 0.645, the one from the sample. So the p-value is 0.001, which is very low, right? So interpreting that means there is a 0.1%, assuming the null hypothesis is true, that things are happening by chance, there's a 0.1% of 0.64 occurring, which is very, very low. And so going back to that handout, we see how we decided to reject the null, and it meant it was not plausible. 0.5 was not plausible. So that's how you use the one proportion applet. So the other one that we use is when we have quantitative data, and that's the sorry, trying to go back to the menu. Here it is. Sampling from a finite population model, bootstrap. So when you open that one, this is a very quantitative. So we're gonna go show sampling options. We put in then our sample size, and this one was our sleepless nights from the survey, the sleeping survey in class. So our sample size is 23, our sample mean was 7, and our sample standard deviation was 1.643. So you can also use this, and if you follow the instructions given in this handout, you will also know how to find the p-value. So it says use pop1 and show sampling options. We're going to run 1,000 samples, and of our sample size of 23. And so we're going to go back over here. Sample size is 23. We're going to run 1,000 samples, draw samples, and so it shows me here. And so since we wanted to see if it was greater than 7, and we're going to do be on for a two-sided test and count, notice that our p-value is 0, so which is very low. So that gives us our p-value. Another way of finding the p-value is the theory-based inference applet. And so going back to the menu, under statistical inference, so the 3 applets that you will be allowed on the exam are the one proportion, the sampling from a finite population, and the theory-based inference applet. So opening the theory-based inference applet, I can do the same thing for our sleepless night survey. So it's a one mean. So first come over here to the scenario where there is one proportion, that's for categorical, one mean for quantitative. So we choose one mean. Our sample size was 23. Our X bar, we had found it to be 7.03, and our standard deviation, so 7.03, and our standard deviation was 1.643. And calculate, and we want just, since we only want the p-value, we're going to put test of significance, assuming mu is 8, and we're going to calculate. So there's our p-value. We do want a two-sided test though, so click on the less than greater than until you get the not equals for a two-sided test. Calculate it again, and there's our p-value, 0.0097, which is still very, very low. With the other applet, we got 0, but it's still, we still reject the null hypothesis. It's still less than 0.05 using that level of significance. We can also use a theory-based inference applet while I'm here to find our confidence interval. So if I wanted a 95% confidence interval, it's right there, 6.31 and 7.74. And we did this in class last time. If I wanted a 99%, you just change that to 99 and calculate the confidence interval. And notice that it got wider. If you wanted the 90, change that to 90% and calculate, and it gets narrower. You can use a theory-based inference applet to check your work for a confidence interval, but during the exam, you will have to find it by hand. And by hand is using the t-table in the back. So right here. And this is we did this in class last Friday or a couple Fridays ago. So hopefully you have looked at these notes. Email me if you have any questions. I have office hours on Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30 in Howard Hall 110.